All right, hello. My name is Cameron Benedict, and for my book review, I reviewed The Partisan Sort, a book by Matthew Lewandowski, addressing both kind of the Republicans and the Democrats and how voters sort into either of these two parties. When first looking at the book, it is important to understand that the title is kind of a play on words in the sense that when it says the partisan sort, it is referring both to the parties, Republicans and Democrats, as well as the process by which voters are sorted into these parties. And at the beginning of the book, Lewandowski actually makes a distinction between the processes of sorting and mass polarization. And the important distinction here is that mass polarization is the process of voters moving to the extreme sides of either the debate or the party, but ideologically moving to a pole, be that the right or the left. Whereas sorting is simply changing your ideology in order to fall more in line with the parties. It doesn't always have to mean a shift in ideology. It can simply mean allying yourself with that party. Um, but often it does mean shifting your beliefs to fall more in line with the parties. And Lewandowski's argument in this book is that while the modern political landscape is getting more polarized, the primary force at work on the voters is not polarization, but is instead sorting. And to kind of illustrate his point, throughout the book, he looks at the changing political landscape of America through the past several decades, and he explains that voters generally sort because of elite cues. These generally being when elites define their position on an issue such as abortion or civil rights. And he touches on issues such as those. One section of particular note was when he touched on Reagan and Reagan's stances, those positions for the Republican Party. Um, it kind of set a clear guideline for what being a Republican was. And it was a divisive time in politics, setting the Republicans and Democrats apart. And seeing this allowed voters to sort themselves onto either side of the debate. Of course, as the elites of either party begin defining their positions, they tend to move to either extreme, which is something we have seen especially in today's modern political arena. And this has some pros and cons. It allows voters to kind of see which party they support more easily, but on the other hand, it means that voters are kind of becoming further and further apart as the parties are. Um, in the book, Lewandowski mainly focuses on the process of sorting and how this changing political world helps voters sort more easily. Um, but I found it interesting that this process was so similar to mass polarization in the sense that as the parties become polarized, that's what the voters are doing as well. Lewandowski argues that this is because they use it to sort, um, but I found it interesting that as the Republicans and Democrats grow further and further apart, so too will their ideology, and so too will the voters' ideology. Throughout the book, Lewandowski mainly focuses on how sorting has come to be and its role in America's political history. Um, and as I already said, when talking about Reagan, he notes that Reagan's policies on defense spending, tax cuts, and various domestic spending programs sharply divided the nation's elite along ideological lines. To me, this line stuck out because it was very reminiscent of what the current president is doing and the current political arena. This split along ideological lines seems to not be anything new. But in my paper, I argued that perhaps it's more severe this time than it has been in the past as a result of the age of internet and everyone's mass media and everyone seeing all these news stories all the time. But still, despite the stark polarization of elites in the modern world, I believe that Lewandowski would still argue that sorting is the primary force at work and that there is still a distinction between this process and mass polarization, and probably that the two will never completely merge. Although, to me, it seems like they're becoming more and more similar. Overall, it was an interesting book to read, not quite what I expected. Um, but yeah, it was clearly well researched, and I would highly recommend it.